The League of Women Voters is a national nonpartisan organization formed to encourage citizen participation in government. It never supports or opposes any political party or candidate. The statements and opinions of the candidates are presented solely in the interests of public service and in no way are to be construed as an endorsement thereof by the League of Women Voters. The League of Women Voters takes no responsibility for any of the views or facts stated by the candidates.
Good evening. Welcome, everyone. Welcome, the candidates. Thank you all for participating in local government. I'm Kim Russell, a resident of Rochester, a business owner, and I have served on the Rochester City Council for 3 terms. The League of Women Voters, a nonpartisan political organization, encourages the information to the participants and citizens in the government that work to increase the understanding of major public policy issues and influences public policy through education and advocacy. Tonight, we will introduce to you the candidates competing for 2 City Council at-large seats and 1 District 2 seat in November 5th in the general election. All registered voters in the Rochester Hills are eligible to vote for the at-large. However, only registered voters that live in the northeast section of the city are qualified to vote in District 2, and we will have a map available for you to know what district you are in. The members of City Council, their positions are 4-year terms, and they earn $6,577 per year. David Walker is in the 1st District, and Susan Boyer is in the 3rd District, and they are running unopposed in their positions. The mayor, there is no candidates that are filed, but anyone that wants to write in, including Brian Barnett, you can write in whatever candidate you would like. It is our intention that following this forum, you will be informed and able to cast a responsible vote. Thank you to the candidates for putting yourselves out there, for running for local office and serving your neighbors and businesses. Not many people have that opportunity to do what you're doing today, so thank you. The candidates have drawn for their order of speaking and will introduce themselves for 1 minute. For their opening statement. Following the opening statement, the candidates will respond to questions from residents, you in the audience. Questions can be directed to any or all candidates. Each candidate will have the opportunity to respond to any question. A rebuttal to the questions will be allowed. Responses are not timed, but we ask the candidates to limit it to approximately 2 minutes. Questions and responses can only be addressed that are pertained to the position of a member of City Council. Personal attacks are not allowed. We ask you to please hold your applause till the conclusion of this forum. Now we will begin with the opening statements with at-large candidates. So Sharon Pizzuti, it's your turn to get that 1 minute of opening.
Thank you so much, Ms. Russell. Hello, my name is Sharon Pizzuti. I want to thank you for the opportunity to address the League of Women Voters and the residents of Rochester Hills. As a lifelong resident of Oakland County and a 27-year resident of Rochester Hills, I am proud to be a candidate for City Council at large. I am the grateful daughter of the late Wayne and Koza Hawley. I'm the proud wife to Rob, blessed mom of Zoe and Eliza, who attend Rochester Community Schools. I graduated from Oakland University, and my 31-year career is rooted directly in public service for local, state, and federal government focused on children and families. I decided to run for city council because I believe my work and my life experience directly applies to local government, and I can contribute to the positive impact our city government has in our community. I'm a proud member of our library, the Van Heusen Museum, and the OPC. I am an active member in my church and a parent volunteer for the Rochester Community Schools, where I've led and supported PTA committees and programs. I'm humble, focused, and ready to use my experience and hard work ethic to serve every resident that lives in the city of Rochester Hills to keep it moving forward. I'm endorsed and supported by Mayor Brian Barnett, and I would be honored to have your vote on November 5th. Thank you.
That was perfect. You had 1 second left. Now, Mr. Dupron, you may do your opening statement.
Hi, my name is Jeff Duperrin. I want to thank Kim and the League of Women Voters, and of course all of you for participating in this forum. I've been a resident of Rochester Hills for 20 years, where my wife Jen and I are raising our 2 children. I have 2 engineering degrees and an MBA, and I run 2 companies in Rochester Hills. T&E International, which is an international trade company, and also T&E Investment Group, which is a real estate investment company. Because of my commitment to contribute in the communities that I live in, I have over 30 years of public service. Much of it now in leadership roles on boards and as officers on those boards. Presently, I'm on the board of Project Forgive, an officer in the Optimist Club, on the City of Rochester Hills Water Advisory Committee, and I'm on the Public Safety and Infrastructure Committee, where I'm currently the vice chair, and I'm taking the lead for the city in terms of transforming how we fund and manage our stormwater system. We are fortunate to live.
Thank you, Mr. Duperrin. Thank you very much. Did you guys hear my alarm go off? I'm sorry. So thank you so much. Now, Dale Hetrick.
Thank you to the League of Women Voters for putting on the forum this evening, and thanks for all of you in the audience and those of you watching at home for engaging in this important election. Good evening. I'm Council Member Dale Hetrick, and I want to continue as your Rochester Hills City Council. I'm going for my 2nd term here as a Rochester Hills City Council member. The reason I'm seeking a 2nd term is because I've proven to be a catalyst of driving positive outcomes in the city. 1, safest city in Michigan. 2nd, we have the best place to start a business. And 3rd, we have the lowest commercial vacancy rates in history. These outcomes are a result of my work and focus on key issues that are important to you. Public safety, we've added additional police deputies and firefighters. Infrastructure, the roads are rated good are up 26%, and roads rated poor are down 42%. Our city's finances are strong, our budgeting process is transparent, and consistently ends the fiscal year with a structural surplus. And from an innovation perspective, I'm committed to completing Innovation Hills Park and the Auburn Corridor. I have a clear track record to be for Rochester Hills to be the preeminent place to live, work, and raise a family, and I respectfully ask for your vote in November.
Thank you, Mr. Hetrick. All right, now, Therese Manjoli.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Russell. Again, thank you to the organizers, and again, to all of you here and on TV who are going to be observing and listening to us this evening. Since running for office last spring, I've been listening to a lot of voters, and a common theme has come across about deer, detours, and development as the issues that everyone is talking about right now. But those issues today may not be the issues in 6 months or a year. My 32-year experience here as a volunteer and as an elected official on the Rochester School Board have shown that I have the demonstrated skills to listen to you, the voters, the residents of Rochester Hills, on how you want to have issues addressed by the city and resolved so that we can have a great community to live in. I look forward to listening to you, to hearing what your issues are, answering your questions tonight and into the future. And if you do have questions for me, please call my cell phone at 248-225-2864. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Manjoli. Thank you very much. Mr. Mason.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for having me here. I've been in law enforcement for 21 years. Today, my family is in more danger than ever before. We moved here for educational opportunities, peace, and open spaces that mimic neighborhoods I played in as a child in Detroit. Rochester Hills is fiscally responsible, environmentally conscious, and it has built relationships across the region that continue to serve members of this community. I'm running for city council because we are not the safest city in Michigan. A diverse voice has been missing from the conversation, and that absence has allowed many things to go unquestioned here. From Confederate flags being flown in the beds of pickup trucks that end up parked at local high schools, to members being bullied because of their religion, because they belong to the LGBTQ community, because of their race, because English is not their first language. I'm running for Brennan, who got lost on his way to school and knocked on the door of a neighbor, and that neighbor's directions were delivered with the speed of a shotgun blast. This is not who we are. Together, through more open and honest dialogue between our residents and our leaders, we can make this community a safe place for everyone that calls Rochester Hills home.
Thank you, Mr. Mason. Mr. Blair.
Thanks, Ms. Russell, and I appreciate you asking me if it was Dave or David. My wife calls me Dave, and my 6-year-old twins, Ben and Abby, call me Daddy. I'm fine with any of them. I'm a local business owner. I'm involved in the Rotary Club, the Chamber of Commerce, the Masonic Lodge. I love this community. The Blair family's lived in Rochester Hills for about 10 years, and with every passing day, I just grow more attached to the great things that the leadership of this city is doing, and that's really what motivated me to go into city council and try and get on council. So I appreciate this opportunity, look forward to all the questions, and wish all the candidates the best of luck. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Blair. So now, at this time, we will be having questions from the audience, and I have my first participant right here. So I'm going to hold the microphone. You can ask the question, and then you can address it to the whole candidate panel or to an individual. So go ahead and ask your first question.
Good evening. It's a pleasure to be here again. I have a two-part question for all the candidates. Please make sure you answer both parts. First part, have you read the entire budget book and the technical appendices? Second part, was there anything in the budget book and technical appendices that concerned you? If so, what and why? Thank you.
So this is addressed to everyone, I'm assuming. Okay, so we will start with Therese Manjoli.
Thank you very much for the question. Yes, to your first part, yes, I have read most of the... Sorry, I have read most of the budget book. He did warn me about making sure I turned that back on, so thank you. I have read through most of the budget book and the technical appendices, and as I look through them, I do have some questions. I was amazed at the difficulty that's in the technical appendices, 221 pages in that book, providing an extreme amount of detail regarding our budget expenditures and how much is done by each department. And as I went through them, you asked about concerns. More about the detail that's there and the road millage. So as you may or may not have gotten your card about the road millage that the city is putting out there, combining the road millages, the question that is on the ballot is for the new combined road millage to generate $4 million plus in benefits from that road millage. And it says it will not increase your tax rate. But indeed, your tax rate will not go up, but your taxes will. And in the technical appendices, they go through how much we're gaining in taxes for the local roads based on your increased SEVs every year. And we will be seeing a tax increase by the time this is implemented in 2021. So I do have concerns. I think the residents need to understand more. The transparency that's there is great. Mr. Snyder has done a wonderful job sharing the information about the budget. And if you can't sleep, that's an excellent thing to start reading to give yourself, to cure insomnia.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Manjoli. Mr. Hetrick.
Thank you for the question. Answer to the first question is yes. Of course, I've read the books cover to cover because I have to do my job as a city council member. What concerns do I have about the budget? Really few. If I could do one thing, it would be to add more money for our road infrastructure, because we do have to make more of an effort to increase our roads from fair to good, or from poor to fair and fair to good. However, that would take away from other elements of our budget, because at the end of the day, we're going to allocate a millage that has been very consistent year over year over year with our residents. That has not changed. And so for us to add more money for infrastructure, we would likely have to increase millages, and that's not something I want to do. Now, with regard to the road millage, that does not increase the tax rate whatsoever. And what every year it does do, because SEVs do go up, yes, we get additional income because of the changes in SEV or SEV values from the homes that are in Rochester Hills.
All right, thank you.
So that's for me.
Thank you, Mr. Hetrick. Mr. Duperrin.
I have read both the 6-year CIP and the 7-year budget, and I've also reviewed the master planning document. First of all, as an engineer, I can say that the detail and the breadth of this sort of appeal to me. I think our city is better managed because of it, because of the transparency and because of the detail and the thought and the work that obviously goes into these documents. There are some things that I would prioritize differently. One of them is around optimizing the remaining 5% of available space we have in the city. Optimization for me includes affordable senior housing, preserving and advancing our iconic trails, parks, and green spaces, and expanding our footprint in green energy and green infrastructure.
Is that, you finished?
No.
Okay. We'll wrap it up.
Also, important to me is investing in increasing citizen participation in the decisions that we make in City Hall. I would like to see a couple of people doing community outreach. They would be dedicated to going into local communities like Rotary and the Chamber and the VFWs, churches, mosques, HOAs, and presenting how citizens can become involved, or at least informed, because our website does a very good job of allowing you to be informed on about 20 different aspects of what we manage as a city, and then let them know how they can become involved when they have something that sort of sparks their passion.
Thank you, Mr. Duperrin. Appreciate it. Now, Mrs. Pizzuti.
Thank you. Yes, I've read the budget and the appendices. I've also attended the city council meetings where I was able to witness firsthand how the budget was openly shared with the public for public opinion. It was a public hearing that was held in addition to regular city council meetings. Much discussion was held, comments were made and taken into consideration. Mostly I'm impressed with the idea of a city roadmap. There's a 7-year plan for our budget that scopes out all of the things that take into account all the services that the city offers. And then we also run on a 3-year budget that gets voted on every 3 years. In fact, this past Monday, the city council voted to pass the budget unanimously. Some things that sparked me when I looked through the budget documentation was the fact that we have the second lowest millage in all the cities of Oakland County. On average, $87.17 per family home goes to the services that the city provides. That includes pathways, RARA, OPC, library, museum, fire, police, local roads. And I was really impressed because I personally know the level of service that we get, and so do many of you in Rochester Hills. And to think that we're the second lowest millage and the city is able to efficiently provide those services is very impressive to me. Also, I think it's important to note that our taxes coming in total over $34 million, $27 million of which are already allocated to millages. Those millages take care of us. That is what covers our street. They're specially allocated to local streets, fire, police, pathways, library, OPC, and again, RARA. And then that $7.2 million that sits out takes care of government services, can also be allocated to parks, library, green space, et cetera. I think our financial position is good. Everything that's come out, we've won awards, in fact, for how we report. Our budget document has won awards from city government, as well as they've acknowledged that our fund balance policies are stellar and being used in large cities across the United States. So for me, the budget process seems positive and good, and I am very thankful for a city that is so conscientious in how they handle our hard-earned funds.
Thank you, Mrs. Pizzuti. Mr. Blair.
Well, thanks for the recap, Sharon, on the low taxes. I just want to add to that. It's really impressive with the increase in scope we've seen over the last 5 years. Our millage rate of 10.4 has not gone up in 5 years. So as scope increases, the taxes stay the same, and that's a remarkable testament to the great leadership we have. As I thumbed through the 340-page budget document, a few things jumped out, one of which was the 23% capital outlay in the proposed expenditure summary for 2020. And of that 23%, almost a quarter of our budget, 34% of that is water and sewer. And I've become aware of a lot of deferred maintenance that needs to occur on our stormwater system, and the amount of money being spent on that infrastructure is something that council really needs to focus on. And I think taxpayers should be aware that that's going to be a tremendous project over the next 4 years. So that's my area of concern. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Blair. Mr. Mason.
I've read through the majority of the budget documentation, and one thing that comes up for me is that there are 1,900 units for low-income and senior citizen housing. I would like to see that since we are 95% built out, I would like to see if we could come up with a solution where seniors could age in place.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mason. Now we have our second question.
My question to you all candidates is, we know traffic in our city is horrendous, and you throw construction, it just forces all the traffic into our subdivisions. My question is, what solutions can you offer to alleviate not only the traffic in our city, but in our subdivisions?
Thank you for that question. Mr. Hetrick, would you like to start?
Of course. It's a very good question because the number one concern in the statistically significant survey we do with residents is traffic congestion. So one thing we're doing to address that, maybe not necessarily short term, but over the long term, is the master transportation plan, which we as City Council adopted or approved 2 meetings ago. What that plan will do is put things in place that will allow us to make proper choices on how to move the traffic through the city in a way that avoids some of the congestion problems. Now, in today's situation, we've got things going on Auburn Road, we've got things going on Livernois, and that's going to prompt people to go through the subdivisions to try to avoid some of those detours, and that's not right. And in fact, with regard to the Auburn Road project, we took a lot of extra effort to deploy police officers as well as other of those traffic control devices that would slow the traffic down and prompt people to stick with the detour so that they weren't running through subdivisions. The short answer is, with regard to congestion, we're working with it. Like I mentioned earlier, we've invested a lot in our roads to make the traffic go better. However, once we get that transportation plan in place, that'll give us a lot more direction on what we can do to actually make the road system work best for our commuters, get the kids to school, get people to entertainment, get them to our shops, and get people home in a timely manner. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hetrick. Mr. DePerrin.
And I've visited nearly 5,000 people as I've gone door to door in this election. One of the most common concerns that I hear is about traffic congestion. And I, like all of us, have experienced this almost daily. Most of the heavy traffic in our city is on county-owned roads. The larger infrastructure is where basically a lot of the through traffic goes. And while we have a good relationship with the county, I don't think that relationship is really meeting our needs as a city. And so I would certainly like, in terms of a long-term solution, is to find a way to be more effective in our relationship with Oakland County to solve some of our congestion issues, including signaling, traffic signals. You know, we also have congestion on our local roads, like Hamlin and John R. And those we actually have a much more control of, and our capital improvement plan needs to reflect investment to deal with the congestion there. You know, as complaints, I've seen the same thing where you see detours coming through. small neighborhoods. And it's really critical that that information is taken to heart immediately and it's dealt with. The sheriff has been really cooperative in terms of patrolling, putting up speed signs, that type of thing. And it's, I think, very important that we continue to do that and do it more if the problem keeps getting worse.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. DePerrin. Mrs. Pizzuta.
Thank you. In referring to the survey that went out, we survey our residents every 2 years here in Rochester Hills. That's something that I learned in the last 6 months, which really warmed my heart because I'm a research data kind of gal. So in that survey, you know, the folks were asked if what do they think of the condition of the current residential streets versus the main streets? Would they be willing to pay a millage, for instance, to make updates? You know, what was the #1 issue? 60% of the residents said traffic flow and congestion. The majority of residents said that the residential streets were good and in satisfactory conditions. However, the main streets were not as satisfactory, that they needed more maintenance, and that the majority of residents also agreed they'd be willing to do a millage if the roads were fixed and traffic flow could be alleviated. One of the main reasons I moved to Rochester Hills was because it was a safe city, because it was accessible to so many things I needed to get to, like the expressway and all the things that places that I go. And you know, I chose to raise my family here, and I support our safety teams who are always looking regularly and doing research in our zoning and planning. That's where the idea came up with for the roundabouts, updated signage, lights, this sort of thing. I definitely would support an action where city staff were to meet more openly with residents and identify solutions to traffic issues and look at ideas such as widening the roads, especially key roads that are basically log jams in the mornings and in the evenings, and I'm sure you all know which ones are which. I live near one, and so I would definitely support that further research in that area, and certainly any resident can come to any city council meeting and get 3 minutes on the agenda to express their wishes and their concerns and complaints, and the city council will follow up with them. So I would encourage residents to continue to be vocal, as I will continue to be.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Mr. Blair.
Thank you. You know, this is one of the unfortunate artifacts of having a city that's doing all the right things to make people want to live there and want to shop there. We're going to have traffic. But to answer your point specifically, sir, when the traffic goes at a high rate of speed in subdivision streets, that's a safety issue. And that's the first priority for City Council, is making sure that our residents are safe. Thankfully, we have a great relationship with the Oakland County Sheriff's Office, and when these issues came to Council's attention regarding the Auburn Road Corridor, the deputies were deployed, and they put speed signs up and helped alleviate that problem. Going forward, though, I think continued investment in our traffic calming programs is required. Speed bumps and things in residential areas, they've proven very effective in the Chichester subdivision where I live, and I think more of that is in order. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you so much. Mr. Mason.
The short-term solution would be to continue to engage in dialogue with the community. A longer-term solution would be, I just came back from New York City, and they specialize in moving a large amount of people all over the place in a precise manner. I would study places like New York City with regard to mass regional transit so that there was less traffic on the roads. We're 95% built out, and so I would really want to explore that.
All right, thank you. Mrs. Manjoli.
Thank you. So there's a couple of different things when it comes to the roads, whether we have a master plan on what's going to be fixed and the schedule in which we do that in coordination with the county and the federal government when road dollars are available. But once we start projects, we need to start looking at how that's going to impact the local community. Where I live, just south of Adams High School, I couldn't get out of my subdivision one day because Walton was being paved and then Livernois was being detoured onto Adams Road. On the Nextdoor app, we see subdivisions that are planning with their neighbors to go park their cars out on the street in alternate patterns in order to make sure that cars can't zoom through the streets in order to make them cut-through paths. why do we have to wait? Why do residents have to wait for situations to get that bad? Mr. Smith, when you came to council and were putting in your concerns about what was going on Auburn Road, they were saying, we're going to wait and see what the traffic patterns become before we put any remediation into the neighborhoods to fix that problem. Why are we waiting? Why aren't we putting remediation in place when the construction project starts, so we don't put our kids in jeopardy, so we don't have accidents in there, so parents aren't and residents aren't being frustrated because people are going 45 in a 25. We need to plan ahead. There are some things as simple as, and I did contact one of my council members, on the traffic that is being diverted onto Livernois going southbound, basic engineering says you can watch where the chain of things back up. And the backup was at the light at Avon and Adams. And all they had to do was make the left turn arrow longer so that more cars could get through that intersection and they wouldn't be gridlocking from Avon and Adams through to Tinkin. So it's some simple things that we can do very easily if we plan ahead. And that's where I think our city needs to do more work in working with our construction companies and planning the way that we signal through those neighborhoods and on the major intersections.
All right, thank you, Mrs. Manjoli. Mr. Hetrick.
I would just like to make one follow-up comment, or actually two follow-up comments. First, with regard to Mr. Duperrin's comment regarding our relationship with Oakland County. Having the roads owned by Oakland County is actually a good thing for us. It actually saves the city money. And because our relationship with the Road Commission of Oakland County is absolutely terrific, we've been able to do something called advanced construct. We advanced construct Tinkin 4 years ago, and we are advanced constructing Livernois. And they're allowing us to do that because we're putting the money up. That goes back to our strong financial position and our ability to fund these projects ahead of the Road Commission for Oakland County's budgeting process.
All right, thank you.
And that gives us a lot of advantage on getting these things done.
All right, thank you very much. Now we're have another question from the audience.
This is for all the candidates. Very simple. What is the one decision you support and one that you would oppose?
Mr. Duperrin, would you like to start, please?
One decision?
One decision that you would support and one that you oppose.
Okay. Could you help frame the question a little more for me? I apologize.
So would you like to frame it a little bit more?
I mean, if they're running for council, something you support, what's something you oppose?
That's being discussed now? Okay. One of the great things about being on council is you can do sort of bold, cool things once in a while. A lot of it is sort of keeping the lights on, right? Keeping the fire trucks running. But once in a while, you get to do something really cool, like the Auburn Road Corridor and Innovation Hills. So that's definitely something I support. One thing that I've seen a decision made in the budget, and it is that there have been teed up into the CIP to do solar energy, to put solar panels on the DPW building on Auburn Road. And so I would make that a priority and bring it forward as opposed to sort of continuing to back it up in priority.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Now it's Mrs. Pizzuto's turn to answer that same question.
Okay. So something that a decision that's a regular decision that goes on in every city council meeting is a discussion around safety. And so recently a budget decision was made to expand the fire department and solidify the police contract that we have with Oakland County Sheriffs. And I definitely would wholeheartedly support that. I have family members that are first responders, and I understand the importance of making sure that our children, our families are safe. Again, that's why I came, that was the main reason why I came to move and live in Rochester Hills 27 years ago. Something that I would definitely disagree with would be not protecting our green space and not protecting our environment in such a way where there are tree ordinances that are in place, and in fact, a new one just got signed on this past Monday to preserve the larger growth trees. I would like to see that expanded, and I would not support any removal of those types of ordinances that protect our green spaces and our pathways and preserve the natural environment that's left in Rochester Hills.
Thank you very much. Mr. Blair.
Thanks, Jeff, for taking the brunt of that point-blank question. That was much appreciated. I'll start with one thing I oppose, and that was the mass of infrastructure that went in at the intersection of Livernois and Tinkin. We have a substation that looks like a power plant and a roundabout that looks like an airport. Too many signs, too many lights, too many power lines. I feel that that really detracts from the aesthetic of our community. We're seeing fiber optic lines go up and 5G towers, and I really think that we need to curtail as much as we can activities that impact the visual appeal of our community. That's one thing I oppose. As far as something that I endorse and approve of, we have a tremendous effort in place to engage youth in city government. And every city council meeting, sitting right over there, is a student who's becoming acclimated with the process of running a great city like ours. And that is something I approve of, I want to see more of. And if you aren't aware of the program, the youth program, please look into it. It's a remarkable thing that the city does. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Mason.
The one thing that I would oppose would be the building out of franchises, particularly restaurant franchises, that sort of take away from the country feel of this city that I had come to know. The one thing that I definitely support is the Mayor's Council on Diversity. I would just add that I wish that it had more of the community's involvement. I wish it was more open. That's it.
Thank you, Mr. Mason. Mrs. Manjoli.
So one of the things, a recent council decision that I would not support was the placement of the Premier Academy in its current format at the corner of Tinkin and Adams. A 3-story or a 2-story plus a 3rd-story peak doesn't fit in with the topography and the other buildings that are in the area. It's primarily residential. And while it's labeled a school, it is a for-profit daycare center that's in that intersection, and I would, if nothing else, send it back to planning and ask them to scope that down to something that would be more in alignment with the neighborhood that it was going into. One of the decisions that I would support was the realignment of Eddington. And for those of you that aren't aware, Eddington was on Rochester Road, and they realigned the street, and they put a stoplight in there. But the reason I say that is City Council needs to be aware of the impact of their decisions. Because years ago, they decided they wanted to make streets on a staggered approach. So if you're going down Adams, you would know Powderhorn Ridge and Raintree, we're in a stagger, and we have a light there that's not safe when the lights are flashing and people cut through on the red flashing light. If you go over onto Tinkin and you see Royal Dalton and Medina, again, it was supposed to be safer for a car to have to pull out into the left turn lane and then pull in. So City Council makes decisions and then doesn't realize the impact of those decisions years down the road. So Eddington was fixing something that was done years ago by trying to align it and put a stoplight in there to make ingress and egress easier. Whether or not the city actually made a good decision and is in working with the residents in that area, we need to make sure that that decision does end up being a good one for our community. But that is one that I would have approved to make for safety and make sure that the City Council is aware of the impact of the decisions that they make down the road.
All right, great. Thank you very much. Mr. Hetrick.
Thank you for the question. Things that I support are first and foremost our public safety. Our funding for that has to remain as it is, and as I said in my opening comments, I continue to focus on that and will continue to focus on that as your City Council member. Another thing that I'm very, very supportive of and continue to demonstrate that support by approving budget items around those projects are 1, Innovation Hills, and 2, the Auburn Corridor. One thing I would oppose is shrinking our parks, shrinking our green space, and shrinking the tree canopy in Rochester Hills. We have a distinction as a tree city. We want to be able to maintain that distinction. The ordinance we put in place increases the tree percentage in developments from 37 to 40%. That's a good thing. And it also puts in place other provisions that prompt the developers to maintain those trees and or pay into the tree fund and or do additional things to make sure that we maintain that tree canopy. That is an important element, an important part of the reputation of the city of Rochester Hills. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Now we have another question.
Good evening, candidates. My name is Jim. I, first of all, want to thank you for your participation in government. This is what makes America great. My question for you tonight, this is for all the candidates, is you ought to know, especially if you're in a position now or if you're lucky to get elected for your position, eventually, if you're there long enough, the city charter says you will be term limited. My question is, are you willing, or do you have an opinion, first of all, about term limits? And second of all, will you pledge here tonight that if you are lucky enough to stay in your position that long, where you are term limited, will you in fact allow that to happen and not do anything to go against the charter?
Mrs. Pizzuto, would you like to begin that?
Yes, absolutely. So City Council has at-large is a 4-year term limit. That's what I'm applying for and a candidate for. And I have worked in government for 31 years at all levels, at local, state, and federal level, both directly and as a consultant. I work with politicians on a regular basis and decision makers, and I've seen the rotation of decision makers, and I've seen when leaders stay in positions sometimes too long because that takes away from them mentoring others, I think, and bringing others along and into the fold and allowing others to step into the fold and expand the reach of qualified candidates. Other leaders I've seen leave and wish that they wouldn't because they're few and far between, and what they bring to the community and what they brought to, in some cases, the state or the nation, I wish they would have stayed. So for me personally, I support term limits. I think that they're healthy. I think they're reasonable. I think they keep people on their toes. For me, the maximum I could run would be 8 years, 2 4-year terms for city council at large. I can tell you that at the end of those, if I was blessed enough to be voted in this time and I ran again and was able to come in again and finish the 8 years, that I would gracefully exit, but not without having mentored, trained, documented, provided research and resources to others who are interested. Because I absolutely was raised that if you have time, talent, and treasure, that you are to share it and bring others along. So that's my philosophy.
Thank you, Mrs. Pizzuti. Mr. Blair.
Well, Jim, that's a very interesting question, and I think it's important to realize that term limits are part of the checks and balance that make a government effective and fair. The fact that we elect council representatives by district as well helps keep things fair for our residents. But there should be an ability for an effective leader to continue serving past a term limit. Our mayor has been doing an outstanding job, but the charter makes it very, very difficult for someone to continue to serve. He ran a write-in campaign. An overwhelming majority of the community came out and voted in his support, and he's going to serve another term as mayor. I'm sure of it. But I personally wouldn't be seeking anything beyond what would presumably be a second term. 8 years, I think, would be enough. My twins would be 14, and I bet you I'll have plenty of gray hair and be ready to hang up the towel. So thank you for the question, Jim.
Thank you. Mr. Mason.
I certainly support term limits, and if I was lucky enough to come in for a first term and then a second, yeah, I support them definitely. In law enforcement, have mentored many individuals, and I also run a children's mentoring and photography program. So I certainly support the next generation coming up. Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Manjoli?
To the first question on term limits, yes, I have it, my opinion is that, yes, I believe we should have term limits. The other piece of that, though, is we have 42 committees in our community, and we need to make sure that we are finding the next leaders and grooming those leaders in those committees so that when we're done on city council, there is somebody else coming up through that committee structure that is familiar with the city, that has some information, as well as opening up, I mean, not to say that residents as a whole shouldn't be able to run, but I think that we need to be grooming people and mentoring them, and those committees, maybe they should have the same term limits as well, because we have some people that are on there for many years, many terms, and many mayors at this point. And it should be time for us to look at bringing in some fresh blood into those committees as well in order to provide the leaders of the next generation within our city. As far as taking the pledge, yes, 8 years as a city council person and I would be done. Thank you very much. My husband wants to be able to retire at some point, and I know he wants me to be done in 8 years. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Hetrick?
Thank you for the question. And I would actually step back to the beginning of the United States. When we drew up the Constitution, one of the things that the leaders of the federal government at the time avowed was we would serve for a period of time and then go back to our plant or our farms or whatever we work. They did not want to have a lifetime role as a government official. And that's changed obviously over time in the federal government. Now here, as far as term limits, I think it's the right thing to do for municipal government because we want to have turnover. It's important to bring in new ideas, diverse thoughts on how the city should run because that's what makes Rochester Hills the preeminent place to live, work, and raise a family. And with regard to me, Mr. Blair, my hair is already gray. When I finish my second term, that will be ample for me. One thing to note, though, the charter does allow for people to run as a write-in candidate. There's not something illegal about it. It is allowed. Clearly, it rankled some folks, but at the end of the day, I think we did the right thing by allowing Mayor Barnett to take another swing, and he's clearly done a terrific job as mayor, and that shows in the popularity of him, and two, the reputation of the city in general. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Dupeyron, let's wrap this question up.
Okay. I do believe in term limits. It's not an emphatic yes, because there are disadvantages to it, and I think we've touched on some of those disadvantages. In our charter, you know, there are ways for extraordinary leadership to be able to continue in leadership, right? There are obstacles of not being able to be on the ballot. And if you really have the leadership and the talent to be able to overcome those obstacles and still be able to capture the trust of your community, and I think Mayor Barnett is one of those individuals. I think he's done a great job for our city. You know, I think that the charter provides enough of a barrier for those extraordinary leaders to get past those barriers, and if they do that, then, you know, I would support their leadership to continue. And for myself, 8 years, if I'm been blessed with the trust of the community for a 4-year term and then an additional 4-year term, I would look for other ways to serve the community after that.
Thank you very much. Now we have another question.
Get my notes up here. Good evening. My name is Pablo Fraccaroli. Mr. Dupeyron, thank you for addressing citizen participation in local government. I would like all the candidates to speak to their views on the state of citizen and voter engagement in our great city. Do you feel there is room for improvement? And if so, how would you improve citizen engagement?
Thank you for that question. Mr. Blair, would you like to begin?
Thank you. Well, Pablo, you know, one of the things that I struggle with is why there isn't more attention paid to local government, right? city council, the mayor, things happening even at the county level have more of an impact on our daily lives than much of what comes through Lansing and Washington, D.C. And these are leaders that, unlike our state and federal representatives, you can actually pick up the phone and call them, and they'll listen. And you can come to a room like this and be heard, and come back until you're heard again. You are afforded that luxury. Yet, for some reason, this level of government is overlooked, and everyone focuses squarely on, who's the Republican or who's the Democrat running for the presidency, when the truth of the matter is their actions really have very little impact on you. So how do we improve engagement with this level of government? Well, to go back to my previous statement, it starts with our youth. They need to know what city government actually does, and then they're going to grow up to be taxpayers, mothers, fathers that know where important decisions are being made, and they will be the voters that turn out for local elections. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Mason.
So to improve voter engagement, I would echo Mr. Blair's statement, but I would also add that since this campaign began, I learned a lot about city government. And every time I learn something, I want to teach my daughter. I want to teach my son. And so the first day that I went out to canvass, I took my daughter with me so that she could see not only how we build community, but also how you run for office. I take my daughter everywhere I can. And I would encourage many of you in the audience to do the same, whether they are your children or your grandchildren, so that they can see not what time it is, but how a watch works, because that's important. That's it.
Thank you very much. Ms. Manjoli.
So there's a couple of pieces to civic engagement, and the first piece is encouraging people to vote. This city council election is going to be decided by maybe 20% of our voting population, possibly less. So when you consider that we'll have 10 to 12,000 people maybe voting in this election, and we, as Mr. Blair has indicated, we are the very local piece of government and have the most direct impact on you, but the least amount of people are going to be voting for that position. So one of the things we need to do is encourage more people to vote and get involved in the selection process. The other piece, as I mentioned earlier, is that we have 42 committees, and we need to start looking at how do we get more people involved in our committee structure. Are the committees that are there sufficient for what the city needs as far as engagement with the community into the decision-making process? And can we encourage more people to get involved in those different committees that we have? The third is, as your city council representative, I believe it's my job to go out and hear from you. I need to be out knocking doors, meeting with your homeowners association, setting up coffees, not just when I'm running for office, but after I'm elected, because I shouldn't be just a face at your door every 4 years. So my goal is to get out there and work and meet with the residents far more often, to go out to them, so that when I come here and I look out and there's only one person in the audience minus the staff, that at least I know I'm representing the voters that are watching us at home. So I think part of that is making sure that we as the council are actively engaged with our community and get more people engaged through the committee structure, as well as please go out and tell your friends to vote.
Thank you. Mr. Hetrick.
That's a very good question. With regard to voter engagement, we've actually taken a very positive action on voter engagement. One of the things that was mentioned previously was, how do you get younger kids involved in city government? And we've actually done that. The clerk's office went to the high schools and spent a fair bit of time. And I think they enrolled several hundred high school seniors, juniors, kids that are 18 years old to be able to vote. And that's a terrific start to getting people into being engaged voters. The other thing that I think is important to recognize is, yes, we all go out and we're canvassing and we're talking to people while we're out doing our campaign activities. And what I find is 99 out of 100 people that I talk to absolutely love living here. And what's interesting too is almost every house is a voter. Now, whether they actually truly go out and vote when it comes to that time, clearly we don't get a high percentage. But we've taken very strong efforts to do that. Second thing, it's already been mentioned, our boards and commissions. One of the things that helped me become a better city council member and become more engaged in the community is I spent 6 years on boards and commissions before I was elected city council member. I spent time on the planning commission. I was actually one of the founding members of the Public Safety and Infrastructure Technical Review Committee. That helped me really gain insight into how the government works so that sitting here, I can do a far better job of doing the things we're supposed to do to provide for the health, safety, and welfare of residents. So I would highly encourage anyone, whether you're here in the audience, whether you're watching on TV, to get involved in our boards and commissions, because that's a great place to really understand how we go about doing our work. One more thing, don't throw the hook on me just yet. One more thing about resident engagement, and that's our survey that we do every 2 years. And a lot of people say it only goes out to a few people, but that is a statistically significant survey that we use to really understand the pulse of the city of Rochester Hills. How do we know that traffic congestion is a problem? The survey actually told us that. How do we know that public safety is a #1 priority? The survey told us
Thank you, Mr. Hetrick. I appreciate it.
that. You are welcome.
Mr. Duperrin.
We live in an amazing city. You know, most people agree with that. And I think the catalyst for that, a big reason for that, is because the city is so embracing of community input. You know, every one of these commissions and committees provide opportunities, our public events have opportunities for people to participate and lend their voice. When we do our budgeting, when we do our CIP, when we do our master planning, all of these are opportunities for citizen engagement. And I think because we welcome that and because we get so many different ideas, it's why we have an amazing city. And that's why I want to invest in it. I think the more we have of that, the better we'll be able to shape our city to meet the needs of the citizens. And we have no greater responsibility than do that. And as we go, when I put this into place, what I would also want to make sure of is that we include diverse voices, because our community is getting more and more diverse. And all of this diversity, I think, again, will lend to making our city work for everybody. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mrs. Pizzuti.
So looking at citizen engagement, I'll first talk about the kid side of it, the children side of it, and then work to adults. I'll do it fairly quickly, I promise. Recently, myself and my fellow candidates were able to speak at a local Avondale school, Deerfield Elementary. We sat with fifth graders who did research and prepared to learn more about their local government. They had a teacher who understood the importance of involving youth and to exchange wisdom between youth, government, and all leaders, frankly. We were honored to be able to answer their questions, many of which are just as hard as yours and well thought out as yours. And it was an opportunity for us as potential city council members, and I would like to hope that as a future city council member that practice would continue. And our role as local politicians would extend into the schools, and we could engage the children that way. Another area that addresses children is, it's been brought up, the Rochester Hills Government Youth Council. I have worked in government for 31 years. I know the impact that government has on the community, and I know the power of a voice to speak, whether it's a child or an adult. And so I encourage my all the youth that I come in contact with through volunteering through the schools, but my own daughter as well, to serve on the Rochester Hills Youth Council. Just so you know, the Youth Council runs for 9th through 12th graders. There are representatives from District 1, 2, 3, and 4. It lasts on a yearly basis. You can serve up to 4 years. Sound familiar? It kind of prepares them for possible local government participation. They do things like promote videos. They host a youth summit. They do a 5K. They do community involvement, and they participate on city council. So it's an active way that is very unique to Rochester Hills. Not many cities have this. So this is something that we can take a lot of pride in the fact that we engage our youth. As for adults, the survey is one way to get through. There's another way called the online called the request tracker system, which allows you to make any kind of request or inquiry online, give your contact information, and you'll receive text alerts or email alerts to let you know where that issue is in time. And then also in our survey, we noticed that only 15% of respondents that in the survey said that they had actually engaged a city official, whereas 50% of them actually came in and to the city hall to do business. So out of that 15%, that number needs to be much higher. Engagement, I would work towards engaging those folks that aren't talking to the city officials and make myself fully available. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you very much. Now we have another question, and we will start with Mr. Mason after the question.
Thank you very much. My name is Steve Reyna, and I'd like to know either what you can offer that no other candidate can offer, or what you can offer better than any other candidate.
Good question. Okay, Mr. Mason.
Can you repeat that question? The end tapered off. I'm sorry, Steve.
Two things. Either what you can offer that no other candidate can offer, or what you can offer better than any other candidate.
What I can offer that no other candidate can offer is a certain perspective that nobody here on this panel possesses. I participated in some extremely difficult circumstances and situations that if I didn't say the right thing, people died. I will not walk away from the table. I will not shout. I will not argue. We will get to the bottom of whatever the issue is, and it will be rectified. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Mrs. Mangioli.
So one of the things I think I bring to the table is my 32 years of experience of community involvement. I served for 8 years on the Rochester School Board, so I've been in a position where I know what it's like to make decisions when you've got people that are upset with you in the audience, as well as those that are happy to see you, making decisions in difficult situations. I've been involved in a lot of different community organizations, and my resume for that involvement is out on my Facebook page or my website. Please take a look at all of that. But it brings with me the ability to listen and learn and hear what you're saying, to bring that voice. I have the experience from my years on the school board as well as my other community involvement on seeking out the residents, listening to your concerns, and making sure that I'm bringing those into the decision-making process. In this election cycle, we are going to have definitely 2, if not up to 3 or 4, 3 different council members new on this city council, with a 4th one appointed less than a year ago. So you're looking at a majority of council could be changed in this election. And it's going to be key to understand and make sure that we have leaders that have the experience, that know the community, and that can reach out to the residents and be involved in the decision-making process. And I think that's what I bring to the position of city council.
Thank you. Mr. Hetrick.
That's a very good question. And what sets me apart are 5 years as a city council member and 6 years on various boards and commissions. In my 5 years as a city council member, I've already illuminated some of those things. I focused on public safety, making sure we have firefighters and police officers in place. And by the way, that focus has earned me the endorsement of the International Association of Firefighters and the Oakland County Sheriff's Deputies Association. Secondly, I've focused on infrastructure. That's not a secret. Ever since I've been on a board commission, I've been focused on infrastructure and making sure that those things are in place for our residents. $5 million in local street funding is something that I helped put in place as a resident on the Public Safety and Infrastructure Technical Review Committee and recommended that to City Council. That was adopted. Now, year after year, we are continuing to put that in place to make sure that those things are ready for individuals. Making sure that that budget meets the needs of everyone in the community. We make sure it's transparent. There are 4 times that people get to see that budget. 1, when we do our workshop. 2nd, when we have a public hearing. 3rd, when we adopt the millage. And 4th, when we adopt the budget. Every time people have an opportunity to get involved in that. And every time I make sure that I'm fully prepared to do my job as a city council member for the community.
Thank you, Mr. Hetrick.
One more thing.
Okay.
One more thing.
One more.
Because what we end up doing here is making a difference in the lives of everyone in the community. And people talk about their work. My job when I'm not here is also to make a difference in the lives of people that I work with. I'm in the insurance business. Life insurance makes a difference in the lives of the people I work with. So the things that I do every day are very, very consistent with the things I do here as a city council member. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Duperrin.
I believe I bring a unique leadership ability from my years of business experience and my years of public service. You know, each one of those by themselves don't necessarily create a leader that can be as effective for any area of government. I think those are important aspects. My vision, I have a vision for this city so that when we stand 20 years from now and look back, I believe we will have made the right decisions. This is why I want to prioritize the remaining 5% and other aspects of what we do now to prepare for then. And also, you know, my experience on the Public Safety and Infrastructure Committee as the vice chair, and my experience on the Water Advisory Committee. You know, currently I work with City Council, I work with the mayor, I work with the department leaders within our city, I work with the city attorney. You know, my experience in leading our city's efforts on stormwater and infrastructure planning, you know, maintenance and funding major changes has afforded me to build relationships and to understand how city government works. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mrs. Pizzuti.
Well, first of all, something that would set me apart would be that I'm a champion for children and families. Everything that I have done since the time that I entered the workforce and even beforehand was in an effort to be a fierce advocate for children, families, and also looking at programs that affect seniors as well as my years have gone on, and those issues are becoming more and more important to me. In my 30 years, half has been working directly for government. So I have had the opportunity and blessing to be able to work at a local, state, and federal level. Everything from the Federal Department of Human Services. I also do work directly and with the Michigan Supreme Court, as well as the Office of Child Support. I also work, my work covers the areas of foster care, protective services, and other family issues. That gives me a perspective that's very unique in the fact that I understand how government decisions impact the lives directly of people, how local and state and federal government can impact their lives, how streamlining processes, whether it's policies, procedures, or technology, can have a massive impact in the day-to-day life of a child or a family. Also, I can tell you that my work, the second half of my career, has been consulting for those agencies, my research and experience are leveraged on a regular basis by courts and government agencies whenever they want to improve their services, when they want to streamline, when they want recommendations for how to spend federal funding or grant funding. They actively seek me out to do the research because they know that I have a breadth of experience and that I'm passionate about the subject matter and that I put my full self into my work. So I think that sets me apart from my fellow candidates, and thanks for the question.
Thank you. Mr. Blair.
You know, we live in a world where, on a weekly basis, malware and viruses shut down city governments and school districts. You needn't look far for headlines that speak to that. I bring 15 years of technology experience to the table. I have a, excuse me, I have a master's in IT, a BS in information systems, an MBA, and an associate's in digital media. I've done extensive research into the areas of 5G as well as fiber optic infrastructure. Fiber optic to the home, which will be unfolding over the next 4 years and already has started in portions of the city, was the topic of one of my master's theses. And my goal is to make sure that the technology team here at the city has everything that they need to keep our residents and our community safe from these attacks that are all over the news. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we have 2 questions left. This gentleman here.
I have a question for Sharon and one for Mr. Mason. One thing that everybody talked about were detours or roads. Sharon, you were the only one that I noticed mentioned roundabouts. My question to you is, do you feel they make the city safer? Do they slow down, traffic, speeding traffic, things like that? And would you consider more roundabouts? And Mr. Mason, you were the only one that I noticed mentioned our 5% leftover land. And you mentioned retirement, call them homes, community, whatever, in that area. How would you go about making that happen? Would you do it through zoning? Would you do it through the city perhaps buying the property, maybe leasing it back to developers? How would you accomplish what you want to do with the free space?
Okay, so we will start with Mrs. Pizzuti, and then we'll go to Mr. Mason, and anyone else that would like to address that question, you may.
Okay, thank you for the question. So, in my opinion, you're asking if roundabouts make the area safer or slows down traffic. I think that was the other piece of your question, I believe. For me personally, I live right near the roundabout that is at Tinkin and Livernois. I travel for work. I have traveled for work a lot over my years, and so roundabouts in large cities are a pretty commonplace to me. And so when I heard the roundabouts coming to Rochester Hills, I got a little excited. I thought, well, we're taking it up a notch, and we're going to have these roundabouts. We're going to be like the big cities. I know that the city did the research with the zoning and planning. They also consulted with other large cities to find out where roundabouts should be placed and what type of education should be distributed surrounding roundabouts. I think the roundabout initially, when it was installed near my home, did not improve safety or slow down traffic, because I think a lot of drivers are not familiar with roundabouts. And I think there wasn't an educational component that was substantial enough to accompany those roundabouts to ensure safety. I think there could have been gradual things that could have been implemented and introduced, and better signage that would have helped drivers to understand how to utilize the roundabouts, because I think if they're utilized effectively, that they indeed do create a safer environment and modulate traffic on a good basis. I think that was the extent of the question.
All right.
Sir. Oh, would I encourage more? If it's paired with that education, if the research is done, if the thorough consulting that was done in the past is continued, and new studies are looked at, and the data shows that that makes sense, then I would support it completely. But I'm a data research person, so I need data and research, and I need to talk with people who live in cities like ours, where they have experienced the traffic issues that we have, and find out if those were actually positive solutions. Again, pair it with the education and make sure that our drivers are educated so that it does do what it intends to do, which is to create safety and move the traffic. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to address roundabouts? Oh, Mr. Blair.
I just want to speak to specifically the safety. The way I've actually looked quite a bit into roundabouts and other traffic patterns, and it's all about reducing the likelihood of high-speed collisions, right? So in a roundabout, it's practically impossible to have a head-on collision as long as you're going the right way in the roundabout. And there's another topology, the diverging diamond, which you may have seen over University and where it goes over I-75. Those are actually cheaper to construct. And again, it's almost impossible to have a head-on collision in a system like that. So I fully support them from a safety standpoint, but as Ms. Pizzuti said, people don't know how to use them. So the education aspect is paramount. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Mr. Hetrick.
Just a couple things to add about roundabouts. Mr. Blair's comments about the head-on collisions is exactly right. That's one of the reasons roundabouts were put in. And when the city was building or deciding on these roundabouts, they did extensive research and found the data that said the number of accidents would be reduced on roundabouts, and it would actually improve traffic flow. And I can tell you from personal experience, there's one near my home on Livernois, and if I'm traveling north on Livernois, I hit all those traffic lights and things back up until I get to Hamlin, and then things move a lot smoother. The other thing about roundabouts is they took time to go to various cities that have a lot of roundabouts and learn from those cities that are of similar size to Rochester Hills before we actually implemented them. So we took a lot of time to research and understand that before actually implementing a roundabout. So those are things we do to make sure that we're improving the safety for residents. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Mrs. Majoli.
So I can remember discussing roundabouts when Jim Dustemars was on City Council, and they were first bringing in the concept here. I lovingly refer to them as suicide circles because I'm not a fan, and I think more people avoid the intersection where the circle is than try to drive through them. When it comes to the question earlier about congestion in the neighborhood, I can remember sitting at the circle on Hamlin and Livernois when it was gridlocked because the traffic going up Livernois was stuck in the construction piece, and people were in the circle not letting people go through to Hamlin. So it ended up being bogging down traffic, not allowing the traffic to flow. The Road Commission has started doing some education piece with these nifty little infographics about this person can go in, this person can't go in, C is allowed, but D is doing a bad thing. So if you're on Facebook, like the Road Commission of Oakland County, because you'll see that infographic coming up every now and then. But it's one of those things where even with education and data, I'm not a big fan of traffic circles, roundabouts, however big or small we want to make them, until we can really see that they're helping our community.
All right, thank you. Now, Mr. Mason, we're coming back to you with the second part of the question. If you remember what it was about the 5% of the green space. Okay, very good. Thank you.
So with regard to our maturing citizens and housing solutions, one of the things that I would like City Council to look at if I was elected, and even if not elected, would be to cities like San Diego, where you have children who have gone to college, they're starting a family, they cannot afford a residence in San Diego, and so what some of the parents have done is allowed the building of an in-law residence on the space. And so as the younger family begins to grow and the maturing citizens begin to age, they switch residences. Now, we would probably have to look at zoning for that. Some of the plots of land that are had by some of even our smaller homes are pretty large, half an acre to an acre. Some of them are a lot larger. I don't know if that's a possibility, but I would like for City Council to explore it.
Thank you. Anyone else would like to? Mr. Duperrin.
I think a couple of us have mentioned the importance of making sure that the remaining 5% of available space that we have is we actively pursue priorities that are going to allow us to look back from the future and say we made the right decisions. How we enact them, it depends on which of the priorities that I had sort of outlined. Some of it, I think, is zoning. Some of it is in how we spend money as a city, in capital projects and in operating. And also, some of it, I think, particularly when it comes to green energy and residents, it comes from creating a knowledge center, a resource center with the city where you can explore different options that are a fit for your business or for your family, and be able to get through maybe the first 4 questions you have if you have any interest in this, and answer what are the options, how much does it cost, how do I finance it, those types of things. With regard to affordable senior housing, I think it's the biggest housing issue that we have in Rochester Hills. Affordable housing is an epidemic, it's not too strong a word, across the country. And Rochester Hills isn't any different in that regard. But I think we have we have a very significant deficit in terms of available senior housing. That I would address a couple of ways. One is zoning. I would drive zoning that would support affordable senior housing. Affordable in Rochester Hills means multi-unit. And with multi-unit, you have to carefully balance against other priorities such as our green space. That would need to happen. The other thing that I would like to do is, there's so many seniors that I've talked to that are in this exact situation right now as I go door to door. What else I would like to do is there are other options besides buying a new home or renting a new home that's downsized, that's smaller and single story, even though that's a critical part of the answer. I'd like to make the OPC a resource center for seniors that can look at all of the options in terms of downsizing, then also in terms of being able to stay in place. One other thought, please, is this is really important to me because I believe the seniors have built this community. Their kids have gone to school here. They've paid their taxes here. They've contributed to this community, and sometimes for decades. And so it's important to me that they can live out their life in their hometown with dignity and peace.
That is very important. Thank you very much. Mrs. Majoli.
So we talk about the number of 5%, and that is about the available property that's left. Most of that 5% has not been considered desirable land to develop over the last couple of years. It's just what's left to develop, and some of the development costs are going to be significantly higher in order to develop those available pieces of property. What we need to watch for as council members is developers going out and buying up single-family homes that are on large lots that are neighboring each other and taking 5 homes out and putting 78 in like they are on Livernois south of Hamlin. So while we only have 5% of available space left that's currently vacant, watching what happens with developers and making sure that we put provisions in place for when single-family homes on large properties get assembled by a developer and what they do with that property afterwards is something the city needs to take a look at and make sure we're taking the necessary precautions or putting the zoning and planning in place and working with the neighbors to make sure that they want that kind of development in their area.
All right, thank you. Mr. Hetrick.
Okay, I'm going to be really, really short. And
Counting on it.
A very specific example. Because the 5% of land that's left, you've heard multiple ideas. I'm going to give you a very specific example of what we're doing today that's going to make a difference for people and create opportunities for folks to come to Rochester Hills and find affordable housing, and that's the Auburn Corridor. What are we going to do there? We are rebuilding that entire corridor, putting in, yes, we're putting in roundabouts. We're putting in sidewalks. We're making it walkable. Why are we doing that? The people that live there will now have the opportunity to go get ice cream and not get run over by a car. The people will be able to go and have dinner and enjoy walking around town. The people that go there, I have to use this, by the way, will go there, can go to the splash pad with their grandkids and have a good time. That's going to increase the desirability of that area that already exists. And that's something we're doing to take advantage of opportunities to reinvigorate Rochester Hills.
Thank you very much. Now we have our last question.
Do you feel that as a city councilman, you are the checks and balance over the city, or do you feel that your position is to stand with the city and the mayor?
So let's start with Mrs. Pizzuti.
So I believe that as a city councilwoman that my first priority is to serve the residents of the city of Rochester Hills. I have been charged as a city council person, if elected, to provide a representative government. That means that I have to make sure that all opinions of all residents are taken into account when decisions are made. I have to make sure that proper research and data has been collected. I have to make sure that the committees have weighed in, that the committees are represented by multiple individuals that represent a diverse community like Rochester Hills. I have an obligation to make sure that I'm representing them in a fair and safe way. And my duty as a city council person, number one, is to be the guardian of public trust of funds. When you vote for a city council person, you're basically saying, I trust you to spend the city's money. And the city's money gets spent primarily on safety, which includes our fire department and our police contract, like I've said, and our roads, our green space and parks and rec, our DPS, our water sewer, and all of the infrastructure, snow removal, drains. How that money gets spent is all due to voting from city council members. And also, as a city council member, I have a responsibility to be a liaison on committees, on boards and commissions, and make sure that I'm sitting side by side with residents so that I'm hearing directly from them on a regular basis. Thank you for the question.
I think that is an important question. You know, as Ms. Pizzuti touched on, you know, our responsibility is A, to follow the laws of our city, state, and country. B, to determine how much money we take in, which means how much money we take from you, and how we spend it. My responsibility is to the citizens. You know, I do think the world of the mayor, but he knows that I am an independent voice, that my voice will be to advance the needs of the city and to enhance the city. And if there is a separation, in my view, of what does that and what the mayor believes, then there'll be a separation. You know, I think the mayor has made a lot of good decisions in his career towards the city. I don't agree with all of them. And because I think he's done such a great job, I continue to support him for mayor. And I feel like I have a good relationship with him. But absolutely, my voice is your voice.
Thank you, Mr. DePerrin. Mr. Hetrick?
That's a very good question. And there's a very specific division of power in the city government. We're very much like the federal government. We are the legislator. As a city council member, I am a legislator, which means my job is to create the laws or approve the laws. In the city of Rochester Hills, those are known as ordinances. If you follow our resolutions, when we enact an ordinance, we then grant the mayor the ability to sign that ordinance into law, and then the clerk takes care of getting it published. Second thing, with regard to budgets, again, follow where the money goes. We approve the budgets, the mayor does not. And then we direct him to sign contracts. That's what we do. So there's a clear separation of power between what we do as legislators and have the power of the purse, and what the mayor does as, we'll call it, the chief executive of the city of Rochester Hills, where he then enacts the contracts that we tell him to enact. The last thing that I think is important about how this works and things that people don't see is we work, at least I work, very well with department heads. So behind the scenes, I understand all the things that are going on. So when we show up here, we are fully prepared to make the decisions that are in the best interests of you and not in the best interests of anyone else. That's our job. That's what I do every time I show up to work here. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mrs. Majoli?
So yes, I believe the city council is checks and balances for the mayor's office. As all other forms of government, we have the executive branch, the mayor, the legislative branch, which is the city council, and the judicial branch, which is our local district courts. And so I feel that it's very important for the city council to have that checks and balance piece on it. I have campaigned on the fact that I am an independent choice for city council. I will not be a rubber stamp for any particular person or organization. I will vote yes on issues that I think are good for our community and are serve the best interest of our city and going forward. If I vote no, I'm going to have to be able to explain it to you. And so you're not just going to get me voting no and then wondering why, but I need to be able to explain it. And so sometimes we may not agree on issues, and I may have to tell you that I'm sorry, I don't support the position you're taking on the issue, but I need to be able to explain it to you and be able to justify why I've taken either a yes or no position. And we also need to be able to tell the mayor that maybe the recommendation he's making is not sufficient, and we'd like to send it back to committee and bring it back for, after there's been further study on it. But there needs to be that checks and balances, and you can always count that I'll be your voice on this city council regardless of what issue we're discussing.
Thank you very much. Mr. Mason.
The answer in short is that I work for you. You can always count on me to make the right decision, even when it's difficult, even if I'm the lone dissenter. It is my job to keep you safe. It is my job to keep the city's finances safe. I will not disagree just to disagree. I will do what is right. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Blair.
So I've knocked on a lot of doors and I've talked to a lot of residents, and I've heard a lot of things about council and the mayor and who's in charge of who and who twists whose arm. And the truth of the matter is, it's not hard to see that we have a very effective government here in the city of Rochester Hills. We have a very healthy relationship with the mayor's office, and as Dale mentioned, we're the check to his power. The mayor is a strong mayor, so all the departments in the city report to him, but we control the flow of funds, and that means that we have to work together. And in conjunction with the mayor's office and the citizens who we represent, we form a team, and it's very important that those team players can be effective communicators and keep our city the preeminent place to live, work, and raise a family. Thank you.
Excellent. Well, thank you, candidates. You have done an excellent job of providing us your opinion, and hopefully the people out there will be able to glean a little bit of what they would like to see in their next city council for Rochester Hills. So at this point, we will begin our 30-second closing statement, and we will begin with Mr. Blair.
Well, Kim, thank you so much for or Ms. Russell, thank you so much for your excellent job as the moderator here, and thanks also to the rest of the candidates. This was an outstanding experience, and hope to earn your vote. Thank you very much.
All right. Mr. Mason.
Thank you for having us. When we first arrived, I went to work and I kept to myself, as many others who have recently found peace do. But I was not participating in community. So when people didn't greet me, I didn't greet them. I too became the neighbor who didn't wave. Min Gwen Chow said, "People's perception of who you are is based upon their consumption of media." I realized my error and began to build community. I will continue to build community so we do not pass on these burdens to the next generation. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we will start with at-large, Ms. Manjoli.
Yes. Thank you. As I've been knocking doors, people are asking me, why are you running? And I want to turn that question back to the residents and say, why did you move here? The reason we have great homes, wonderful parks, great neighborhoods, live close to work, and as your city council representative, I want to make sure the reason you chose to live here is the reason you continue to stay here. And so I hope that you'll vote for Teresa Manjoli for city council. You can find more information about my background and resume on my website at electmanjoli.com, or call me on my cell phone at 248-225-2864. Again, I hope you'll vote for me. Absentee ballots got mailed today or tomorrow, so I hope you'll vote for me for city council at large. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Hetrick.
My 5 years as a city council member at large are what sets me apart. My record of success is clear around the 4 areas I've talked about all evening: public safety, infrastructure, making sure our finances are right, and those innovative projects that will continue to advance the city. I'm 100% ready to take on the challenge of your city council member at large at this next election cycle. And as I've already said, I have an outstanding track record to demonstrate that, and I'll ask for your vote in November. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Mr. Duperrin.
Again, I want to thank Ms. Russell for doing such a great job, and the League of Women Voters, and of course all of you that really made this such a great event. You know, I'm working to be elected to council because I believe that my experience, leadership, and vision will make a difference in this community. I think my vision is one that we will look back on 20 years from now and know that we've made the right choices. It's important to build on the work of so many that have made our city great and to bring a vision that optimizes the future growth and development that lies ahead of us. You know, I want to hear from you. It's the only way this works, the only way it works well. So please reach out to me from my website or my Facebook page. I think you can find it. I ask for your vote on November 5th to be your next at-large city council member. Thank you.
And Mrs. Pizzuti.
Thank you. It's been my honor to be present amongst my fellow candidates, members of the League of Women Voters, and our community watching at home. In November, we will celebrate the 35th year of the Rochester Hills City Charter. It states that municipal power, which is what City Council has, is meant to advance the interests of the city, promote ethical, representative government, the prosperity of the city, and do acts, pass, and enforce ordinances and resolutions to provide peace, health, and safety of all people, property, and protect and preserve the environment. I am fully committed to honoring these words that were written by our past leaders some 35 years ago. I humbly ask that you would vote for me on November 5th, Sharon Pizzuti, as your next Rochester Hills City Councilwoman. For more information about me, I'm at sharonpizzuti.com. Also, you can pick up one of my business cards if you're physically here, and my literature just outside the door, or contact me in any form of social media. Thank you for your time.
Well, thank you so much, candidates. Thank you for this forum. You did an excellent job. You are putting yourselves out there, and go out and vote. So the League appreciates all candidates and the members of the audience. Thank you all for your questions and participating in this forum. It's important. Thank you to the City of Rochester Hills for providing us this venue and the television of this program. We will be on, you will be on, I should say, at noon every single day, so you can take a look at this or tell your neighbors. This forum is important to even the sister cities of Rochester Hills, Oakland Township. We do things together. So at this point, we want to point out that the League of Women Voters does have the prepared guide. So it was the blue guide that there's some out there on the table. It's also on their website, which is lwvoa.org, and that will be available October 1st. And there is the map for each of the districts, 2 are unopposed. But we want to say thank you so much and good night.